what is the crisis?
Well, the crisis is we're 49th in common schools, the amount of money we're spending per pupil. That translates into how much you can pay the teachers and a lot of other things and other amenities and enrichment programs in the schools. And I think the people of Oklahoma are not aware of how far down we are. And I don't think that's where our aspirations are. We don't want to be the worst, especially because the whole, educating the talent pool of the state is absolutely what will determine its future more than anything else. And it also is what will bring jobs to the state. So, and you couple that again with higher education, I don't think they know that the percentage of the budgets of our colleges and universities is less than half it was. 1980, coming from the state. They know tuition goes up, but they don't understand the interrelationship between the declining percentage of the budget coming from the state and what's happened to tuition. It's just cost shifting.
Was there a problem with the debate around State Question 744 that didn't raise the question enough in people's minds?
As you know, I think that the state question, that was where we were tied to regional averages and so on. As you probably know, I was very active against State Question 744. I think it was fatally flawed because of the methodology it used, the way it took it out of our own hands, about controlling our own destiny, what salaries we wanted to pay, how we wanted to work. So I was, in fact, virtually a co-chair of the effort to defeat that question. But obviously, that doesn't mean that, because I thought it was a wrong approach. And I think it was based more on a sort of a national cookie-cutter model, and I think Oklahomans ought to take charge of their own destiny. I don't think we ought to farm out our destiny to other people and how they do it. And I think also we need to look very seriously at other reforms in common education. How many school districts do we need? What's the overhead cost in each school district? These things, I think, are a real opportunity. I would love to see the governor put together a blue ribbon panel of some kind to look at how we can both increase support and make it more cost effective at the same time. We're trying to do that in higher ed, and one of the things that I'm focusing on is our curriculum. Are we teaching things? Do we need all the course offerings we have? Are we doing a good enough job on what should be the core curriculum requirements? And also on teaching loads, increasing the amount of teaching across the country. Comprehensive universities' teaching loads have declined over the last 20, 30 years, and they need to go up instead of declining. That's cost effective. And our number one mission is the education of our children, and so time in the classroom is important. So I'm, at our own university, I'm chairing these groups that are pushing for these things myself. And in my remaining time at the university, however long that God gives me to do it, I'm going to be working very heavily on curriculum, cost effectiveness, emphasizing teaching.
You brought up in the meeting roughly 17% now of the university's funding comes from the state.
And the medical school's down to 6.9%.
Is the problem, because you can look at the budget and see almost $1 billion, which is not nothing by any stretch of the imagination.
It's more than $1 billion if you put the medical school and the Norman together.
I'm talking about if you look at the state budget.
Oh, the state budget.
The state appropriations to higher education is close to $1 billion, which is not nothing.
No.
So is the problem that the legislature isn't funding properly, or is it that the universities want to maybe grow faster than the legislature wants you to?
We want to grow enrollment. And when you grow enrollment, you have more students, you have to have more faculty, you have to have more classrooms, you have to have more labs, you have to have more equipment. And since we're at the very bottom of states in per capita degrees per population, and the governor's absolutely right to want to grow that, because as I said, that's the one thing that clearly there's almost an exact correlation between the number of college graduates per capita in your state and the per capita income. And so we want our per capita income to go up, we want job growth to go up, so the thing that correlates is expenditures on education. So I think the goals are right, but you can't educate an increasing number of students with less and less percentage of your budget coming from the state. So, it's not altogether that you have to make a real effort because, and I think that we have saved $100 million in our budget in the last 3.5 years or so. that's not small potatoes. We're talking about carving out 8–10% of the budget. But there comes a point where you have to get back to increasing it. And I'm very sympathetic because there has been some other cost shifting going on. What's going on right now is that the state is cost shifting to the parents and the students. And they're saying, especially in higher education, oh, you can raise tuition and fees, do it. We had I've forgotten what our goal was. I believe at one time we had the goal that students would pay a third of their cost of education. Well, now they're paying more like 40% of their cost. So we've passed that, and we've gone, the pendulum was over here, and it's past that point and gone too far. It's swung too far. But another thing's happened is the federal government has been cost shifting to the states. So as the federal government's had its budget deficits, it's stopped doing some of the things. Let's look at medical care, Medicaid, and all the other things that are part. The state's bill for these things have gone up, and in many ways there's not any way the state can avoid it. So the state is caught in a crunch that is more things are being cost shifted to them from the federal government. So if you look at percentage of the state budget that's going, say, for health care, now and 30 years ago, you'll see a lot more is going for health care. So you have to really fight to make sure that you keep the kind of priority that we've traditionally had on percentage of our budget.
Quickly, because I know you got to go.
For education. So that's tough. It's not easy, and also I'm not against tax cuts per se. As I said in there, I held the record for quite a long while in terms of having the largest income tax cut in state history while I was governor, and very deep cuts in the inheritance tax, because I did away with the inheritance tax between husband and wife. So when I was governor. So I'm not, again, that's something you have to calibrate. So I think what you have to do is say, let's put education first, and then let's deal with these other things. And hopefully you'll also be able to even do some revenue reductions at the same time. But you've got to do them in balance.
Okay, and quickly, because I know you have to go, you said common education, do we have too many school districts? Yeah. Higher education, do we have too many college campuses?
Well, potentially yes, to both. And I think what can happen is you've got to take into consideration such thing as distance. What's appropriate if you've got 5 school districts all within 5 or 6 or 8 miles of each other. That's one situation that probably shouldn't exist. If you go out west and you've got a school district that may be graduating 10 high from the high school, but they're 50 miles away, it's hard to say that there's a hard and fast rule as to where they should be. I think the key is sharing overhead costs. And in higher education, you may want delivery points to remain in certain places, but at least you could do away with some additional administrative overhead by bringing them together in some kind of partnerships.